While searching for a form that she liked, Tenebria enjoyed destroying people's minds. Her greatest joy came from watching them die from the poison of her illusions. Specter Tenebria was part of the small cast of Moonlight 5-star heroes when Epic 7 was first launched. Spec T has pretty weird base stats. She has a very low base HP while having no crit chance awakening, but her base defense and effectiveness stats are pretty high. Specter Tenebria at the time had a very terrible kit. Her S1 has a chance to land 70% poison and it did okay damage. Her S2 states, when an enemy is debuffed, the range of Poison Blast, which is her S1, extends to 2 enemies, and the damage dealt by poisoned enemies is decreased by 30% max. And finally, her S3 attacks with a Nightmare Crystal, decreasing the combat readiness of all enemies by 50% when an enemy dies. The damage of this skill increases by the number of debuffs on the target. Overall, she had a pretty weird kit. She's pretty terrible in Arena since Poison isn't a very strong debuff in PvP, and her S1 didn't even have a 100% chance to land poisons, which hinders her passive mechanic. She's an okay unit in PvE though, especially on Abyss floors, since you can run her with Keris, whose kit also revolves around poisons. As time went on, Specter Tenebria continued to be a really mediocre unit in both PvP and PvE as well, up until the developers took action and reworked Specter Tenebria's kit. Around March of 2019, Smilegate reworked Specter Tenebria's kit. Her S1 remains unchanged for the most part, but they did buff the damage on it by 20%. Her S2 passive has been completely reworked. She now can't be targeted by single target attacks, and whenever someone is defeated, whether it be her ally or enemy, she now gains an attack and defense percentage by up to 10%, which can be capped out at 5 stacks. And on her S3, it remains the same for the most part, but they did give a 100% chance to stun the target, which can be pretty huge in PvP. Unfortunately, this rework didn't make her rise up in usage in PvP. She didn't see a lot of usage on arena defenses. I mean, sure, she can't be targeted by single target attacks, but that's pretty much about it. On offense, she's okay when used with Oxlots, assuming you had 40 souls right off the bat, but even then, you're better off running a cleaver. But make no mistake, with the right team comp, she's still a decent unit when brought into arena offense. In PvE though, she's an amazing unit. She's really good on Abyss floors due to her passive and poison debuff on her S1, which deals a huge chunk of HP against bosses. She's also a really good unit on both raids and hell raids. On Guild Wars, she saw a fair bit of usage on defenses whenever she's paired with a knight or with ML10. She's also really good on Guild War offense whenever there's a team who has little to no AoE. Due to this rework, Specter Tenebria saw a healthy amount of usage in both PvP and PvE. August of 2019, Seaside Bellona was released, and a few weeks afterwards the meta revolved around her. Seaside Bellona was often paired with FCC, Charles, ML10, or Arbiter Vildred. Specter Tenebria's usage on both Arena and Guild War offense dipped down due to the bulky and offensive nature of these units. Charles has a solid chance of countering Specter Tenebria due to Elbrus and his counter set. ML10 can just straight up kill her whenever Spec T touches her. And Arbiter Vildred can kill the average Specter Tenebria. All of these units also have a hard-hitting AoE attack that can threaten Spec T, and thus her usage in arena offense completely tanked. On the bright side, she's still a very good Guild War unit on both offense and defense, due to the nature of her passive that makes her pair really well with Charles, SSB, and ML10. A few months have passed, and unfortunately for Specter Tenebria, she's still in the same state as she once was when SSB dropped. But out of nowhere, she once again received some changes. February of 2020, Specter Tenebria once again got buffed. The developers gave her a passive effect on her S1 that prevents counterattacks completely. That's not all though. Whenever her S3 is on cooldown, her S1 now attacks 2 enemies. This buff was huge for Specter Tenebria. Previously, Spec T was easily overpowered by units who counterattacks her like Charles, ML10. but now she can freely attack both of these heroes without worrying about Elbrus or innate counterattacks. Her S3 can still proc Elbrus though, so keep that in mind. With this balance adjustment, Specty saw some usage on arena offense, just often being seen and used with cleave teams. When paired together with units like Challenger Dominion, Oxlots, and Bazaar, Specty can safely single-target cleave all of the threatening units in the field with her Soulburn extra turn mechanic without worrying about counterattacks. There were still a lot of AoE threats in the meta like SSB and RB, so she didn't see much usage on arena defenses. Unfortunately, as of right now, Specter Tenebria isn't seen much on both arena offense and defense. The meta defense at this time is Roana, FCC, and Politis variants. She could theoretically do well on those defenses, but it takes too long and requires a solid team to protect her. There are also remnants of Fairy Tail Tenebria and Cerise combo that overtook the meta a few months back, and she doesn't really shine against that composition. Overall, she could still work on offense, just don't put her on arena defense since you're pretty much asking to get cleaved. In regards to Guild Wars, she's still an amazing unit in both offense and defense within the right team composition. Alright, that's pretty much about it for Arena. Next up, I'm going to cover World Arena, or commonly known as RTA. World Arena Season 1 or Showdown Season. World Arena or RTA has a completely different vibe and playstyle to it compared to Arena and Guild Wars. Looking back, Season 1 didn't have a clear meta back then. People were picking the meta units from Arena and Guild Wars, as well as their most well-built units. Unfortunately, Specter Tenebria didn't see a lot of play this season. Seaside, Bologna, and RB were the most highly contested units this season, and they both naturally counter and threaten Specter Tenebria. It doesn't stop there though. There were a lot more AoE attacks this season that threatened Specty like Alencia, FCC, Bazaar, Dizzy, Tempesturin, and etc. By the way, did I mention that Cleave was really popular this season? Yeah, Season 1 wasn't too kind to Specter Tenebria. World Arena Season 2 or Endeavor Season. This season is infamous for the emergence of the tanky meta due to the players abusing the Frenzy mechanic. In case you didn't know, every tick of Frenzy back then increases the overall damage output of every unit in the field. This was a season where Specter Tenebria started to shine though. Equipped with Tagahel's ancient book, Specter Tenebria became one of the premier DPS units being picked this season. A handful of players at the top levels drafted a lot of tanky units that have little to no AoE, such as Bloodwind Haste, Falcon Recluri, both Crows, Ambitious Tywin, and so forth. Specter Tenebria easily cuts through these teams as the match goes on due to, again, the Frenzy mechanic as well as her passive, which gives her additional attack percentage. This was also the season where Specter Tenebria's build shifted significantly. The average Specty back then was the usual high speed, crit chance, crit damage, and attack. A lot of players nowadays invest some bulk into Specty while maintaining a good amount of offensive stats. World Arena Season 3 or Ardor Season. Early on, this season was dominated by both Cerise and Fairy Tail Tenebria. This is also the season where the developers changed as to how the Frenzy mechanics worked. Before, it used to increase every unit's overall damage output. They've now changed it to increase every unit's attack stat. They've also added an effectiveness increase with each stack of Frenzy. Specter Tenebria was now a bit harder to draft due to the more fast-paced control meta. Even though she's immune to single targets, both Cerise and Fairy Tail Tenebria can lock her down and render her useless. The other half of Season 3 is when the Golden Boys came to light. These trio of units don't really have any hard counters to the kit. They also offer a lot of utility and damage output to the table. Luckily though for Specter Tenebria, she once again became one of the premier DPS units in the meta. Since control fell out of favor, Specter Tenebria fit right into the Golden Boy meta. Usually, Specty can't handle the amount of damage output from the Golden Boys, since both General Purgus and Ambitious Tywin are often built as bruisers, and Last Rider Crow dealing true damage because of his defense penetrating S3. But in this case, it was very rare for Specter Tenebria to face all three of the Golden Boys at once due to the RTA setting. This is because the Golden Boys are a highly contested pick, and at least one of them is often banned. This was also the season where Landy became a really popular pick. Landy usually threatens Specter Tenebria, especially when Specty is paired with a lot of buffers on her side. But with the right stats and team composition, This didn't really stop Specter Tenebria, as she's one of the most highly contested picks this season. World Arena Season 4 or Skyward Season. Early on this season, the meta was still dominated by the Golden Boys, Landy, FCC, and Specter Tenebria herself. Fire Ravi actually came into the scene with a huge bang, making dents to Golden Boy members left and right. She could usually solo an entire team by herself within the right scenarios, but when Specter Tenebria is on the board, it's highly unlikely. April and May of 2021 is when the Epic 7 World Championships is being broadcasted worldwide. As usual, the Golden Boys were highly contested, as well as Landy, FCC, and Specter Tenebria. Among the few players that got qualified, some of these players run a lifesteal set on Specter Tenebria. A lot of players took note of this, and even some of them started to build it. We'll get back to this in a bit though. The second half of Season 4 is where the meta completely flipped over its head. Researcher Carrot became the talk of the town this season when she single-handedly shaped the meta to what it is today. Maid Chloe became a really popular pick as well, alongside with Kisei and Blue Crow. When Researcher Carrot debuted into the meta, Specter Tenebria's usage fell off a bit, but fortunately for her, this is where her lifesteal variant came into the picture. A lot of top players started to shift their speed set build into a lifesteal one, making Specter Tenebria effectively more threatening. On a speed set build, Researcher Carrot Burns would typically deal a huge chunk of damage on Specter Tenebria, but when she's on a lifesteal build, she can completely shrug off the damage while giving her a decent amount of sustain throughout the whole match. A lot of players still aim for bulky stats and decent damage on her lifesteal build. Thanks to this, Specter Tenebria quickly regained her popularity and usage into the meta, and to this day, she is still a highly contested pick. So that is Specter Tenebria's hero history. Overall, she was a pretty bad unit at launch, but when Smilegate gave her some love by reworking her and then buffing her at the start of 2020, she then became one of the best units in the game. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like button and click the big red button in order to get notified on my next upload. If there's a unit you guys would like to see in the future, then leave a comment below. And the ones with the most amount of likes, then I may cover it. Anyways, that's it for me. See you guys next time.
Nice.